Hi guys, Dan here. Some of you will have noticed that I haven't been producing new content for the last few weeks. The Silmarillion Explained series has been put on hold, and otherwise, new videos will drop sporadically between now and the early part of next year, when I plan to start putting more concerted effort into building this platform again. Thank you to everyone who has enjoyed the Tolkien content so far. Believe me, there will be much more of it in the future. As always, it helps the channel massively if you like and share the content, comment below and get engaged. The more this channel grows, the more time I can eventually justify putting into it. I am going to start producing longer conversational videos like the pre-recorded chat that you're about to see, and I am hoping to line up some great Tolkien guests over the coming weeks. Hello and welcome back to Voice of Geekdom. This is the first video where I've shown my face on my channel, so for those of you that have never seen me before, here I am. I'm Dan, the Voice of Geekdom. Today I've got a very special guest, a friend of mine who I've met through various different fandom communities, in particular our friends at Here Be Dragons, Aemy Blackfire. Aemy, welcome to the channel.
Hello, thank you for having me, Dan. It's good to finally be on here. I'm not too much of a Tolkien nerd, so I didn't know if I'd ever be on VOG.
Well, luckily that's not a problem today. I'm going to talk for the first time, this is day of firsts, I'm going to talk for the first time about non-Tolkien stuff. We're going to talk about a book series and a TV show adaptation that you and I both love, which is His Dark Materials, adapted by the English author Philip Pullman. Aemy, why don't you talk about how you got into His Dark Materials?
That's a good question. I had heard about it here and there over the years, and I think probably it was the podcast Girls Gone Canon. They do A Song of Ice and Fire, which is a shared love that we have. And they said, hey, we're going to start covering His Dark Materials. And I was like, all right, I don't want to just miss Girls Gone Canon episodes. So I started reading the books. And so in America, it's called The Golden Compass, not Northern Lights, which is kind of dumb, but there's different titles. So yeah, I read The Golden Compass about a couple of years ago when I had first heard that Girls Gone Canon was thinking about doing a different series. And I just finished the Subtle Knife, I guess last year around the summer. And unfortunately, I'm just now getting into Amber Spyglass, not quite done with it yet. But I have been spoiled on a couple things, but I'm not really a spoiler baby, so I don't mind.
That's awesome. And you've just become a new content creator yourself as well. You've been doing your own stuff for a little while now. You write some great essays. If anybody watching this likes A Song of Ice and Fire, I recommend checking out Amy's blog. There'll be a link to that below in the description.
Yes, and you don't have to read them. You can listen to me read them to you on my YouTube channel. So I also started a YouTube channel. Yeah, and I just had my first panel ever. A couple of weeks ago, I had Archmaester Emma and Crowfoot's daughter on to talk about a collab essay that I did with All Hail the Night's Queen about the shade of the evening trees. And I'm hoping to have more people on to talk about His Dark Materials as well. So yeah, you can I can read it to you audiobook style if you'd like. Or you can also go into my blog and read it as well. But yeah, I've been writing essays since June, and I've quickly kind of ingratiated myself into the fandom. So,
yeah, Amy's been a pillar of the fandom, especially this year, I would say. And you've also recently become the co-host on John Webster Film, our mutual friend. I've been on that channel, for those who don't know before. I'll also have a link to John's channel on the description below. John and I have agreed to do reviews of the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy on his channel in December, leading up to Christmas. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Yes, we're very excited to have you on to talk about that. And
yeah,
I'm a cinephile in training. I'm more of a show person. But John was very wonderful, and we became fast friends. And he's really enjoyed kind of my perspective on things, especially my thing is feminist analysis. And so I've been doing a lot of that. And just a slight thing about me, I'm a PhD student of Chinese literature. So that's kind of the way that I talk about a lot of things is through, as you can see from my screen, I'm a little bit of an Asiaphile. So I look at kind of Eastern symbolism in a lot of these series. It's actually even more applicable with his Dark Materials. So I'm hoping to write a future essay about using the I Ching, the Book of Changes, to talk to dust. And we're also going to talk about my first essay today. So
I myself first read the books. Well, I first read the first book, The Northern Lights, as you say, it's called here in the UK. I first read it, I think, about 10 years ago. And then I didn't read any of the other books until about 4 years ago when I took it up again. And yeah, great children's books. And I think they're for the sophisticated child, I would say. Because there's a lot of stuff in there which is challenging to grasp. And I think what brought me to it was reading the first book. I was struck by how complex it is and how it would be a book that I would read to my children one day, just to introduce children to interesting, like, complex themes. And what's your essay about, Aemy? It's about Orientalism and focusing on the Tartars, which are a group of nomadic tribes in his Dark Materials world.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of, in my essay that is going to be out in about 2 weeks, I give you a little bit of Dan's gotten a preview of it. You get a little bit of a crash course in what is Orientalism, which has been described in the 70s by Edward Said and his seminal work called Orientalism. And he describes what exactly it is. It's kind of this phenomenon of people in the West or the Occident, creating the great other or Orient, and kind of grouping Middle Eastern, Central Asian, North African, and East Asian people together as this kind of exoticized and also a lot of negative connotations, kind of as a backward society that is unchanging, whereas the West is modern, right? And this has a lot to do with colonialism, which is why I'm going to have the links on my channel to talk about this. They wrote a really amazing essay, very, very detailed essay about how colonialism plays in the series. And I think that Orientalism is an expression of colonialist power, right? The West feels that it has and the authority over the East to say what is modern and what is correct, right? And so the Tartars are the best way to look at this because they are literally a homogenized Asiatic type people, right? That all of and what I talk about in this essay is that, other than the Egyptians, what we get in the HBO show where they all have birds, at least it's different types of bird demons, right? But the Tartars first of all, they're all men. We never see a female Tartar. I'm into feminist analysis, so I always want to point that out. But also they all just have wolf demons and they all look the same. Right. And so this goes back to so many of these Orientalist tropes that I want to talk about. So the Tartars are a really good example of that. And they are also under the control of the magisterium. Right. So they're also kind of this mindless Mongolian horde, really, because in Lyra's world, which is what I talk about in the essay as well, is that now kind of the Mongols are were the dominant power in Central Asia historically. And it seems like in Lyra's world, that was actually the Tartars who kind of played the role in her world's history as the Mongols. And so they're looked at as this Mongolian faceless horde, which I also talk about in my first ET essay and on my blog, From a Song of Ice and Fire. If anyone listening is interested in that, you can definitely check that out. But that is a very big trope in Orientalism of having this kind of numerous Asiatic faceless people kind of coming to attack Western society, right?
And one of the new characters that we'll see in season 2 of the HBO adaptation is Will's father, John Parry.
But yeah, we've heard about him in the first season through has a video of him, correct? If I'm remembering correctly, in the first season, he sees video, and he also has letters from his dad.
And he has letters from his dad, yeah. Which the bad guys, the Magisterium, are hunting for those letters because they're looking for him.
Yes, and they know that John Parry is his name, Will's father. They know that John Parry has some kind of information that the Magisterium wants. And we're not, if you're a book reader, you know what's up. But if you're a show watcher, you're not quite sure what exactly John Parry has discovered that the Magisterium wants.
And John Parry, he he kind of embeds himself in the Tartar culture, doesn't he?
He does. And that's why one of the things, probably my main argument in the essay, other than, what is Orientalism and why should we care and why does it apply to the story and to our real world? A huge argument I make is that John Perry is an Orientalist trope in himself. He's obviously an important character, and he's Will's father, and he misses him very much. So I'm not diminishing the emotional impact that John Perry has on the show and on the books. But at the same time, let me just list off all the Orientalist tropes that he represents. He is given an Asiatic name, right? Joe Pari, right? Mm-hmm. So he's kind of, he's also inducted in as a Tartar, and he's, there's a word for it that I'm totally forgetting, but they cut a hole in his head, right? And book readers will know why that is. I don't want to give away to the show watchers why that's actually a good thing. But that's the thing about the Tartars, is they have this kind of Eastern wisdom that the West doesn't have about dust, right? And so they're looked at as barbarian, but then here's the white guy coming in and he's learning their secrets, and he realizes, no, they actually have this mystical wisdom, right? So he is a white man learning this Eastern mystical wisdom, right? And he also, I had another one, just one second. And he also, and I talk about in my essay the examples of this in popular media, such as The Last Samurai or 7 Years in Tibet, or the Marco Polo series on Netflix, right? There's this Western man, it's always a man, who travels to the East, right, or Central Asia, and he is able to kind of learn from Asiatic peoples and then take what is important and what is useful and then go back to the West, right?
Yeah, the one I think of is Alan Quartermaine from Haggard. Don't know if you know those books.
I don't think so.
19th century English writer who is very much, he was a colonialist type. He was sort of a bit like Rudyard Kipling sort of type.
Yeah.
But
these figures are important to the West because this is how we filter. This is where our Orientalist views come from, right? It's filtered through Western writers, right? Because we're not, I can read Chinese, but you can't, Dan, right? So if you wanted to learn about China from a Chinese person, you couldn't. You would have to read it in English or in translation, right? And so especially like the example 7 Years from Tibet, it was, I believe, a German, maybe an Austrian man. I'm sorry about that. I don't remember correctly. But he goes and he, meets the Dalai Lama and everything. And it's all very exoticized. And so even though John Perry has made some great discoveries, he is still filtering those discoveries through a Western lens. And that is essentially, he is the kind of white man discovering Eastern secrets trope that I talk about in my essay.
So why does Pullman bring these elements in? What do you think is the message? If there is one.
If there is one. And I do want to, before I get into that, I do want to make kind of just an interesting point that I kind of allude to in my essay, but I don't go into too much, is that he was a white Englishman growing up in the 50s. So a lot of these tropes he would have been consuming through popular culture, right? Especially being a part of the British Empire at that time, which was starting to lose its colonies, but still quite important in the world culturally. And so he would have seen these tropes. And so I think he's putting them in his books because he wants to show how the magisterium is similar to the Catholic Church and similar to the English Empire, which is kind of imposing its views on the world onto other cultures, right? For example, the magisterium thinks that dust is original sin. So if they find out that other cultures respect dust or think it's a good thing, then they're going to, be against those cultures and think that they're backwards. So I think that Pullman is doing this because he wants to show the control of the magisterium. And he also wants to show how other cultures can discover things that are then kind of bastardized or seen as bad by the West. And this is very common, right? Like acupuncture has been misconstrued by the West. Oh my God, don't get me started on how qi and yin and yang, known as yin and yang, you may have heard, yin and yang, right? And qi, these kinds of very basic Eastern practices have been completely misconstrued by the West and kind of either mysticized or demonized. And so I think that's a lot of what Philip Pullman is doing with the Tartars, is that he's showing how, a different people can come to a different conclusion, but then be completely bulldozed by a dominant culture. And in this case, it would be the magisterium.
Perfect. Well, there'll be a link to that in the description below, and that'll be coming out probably after this video does. So check back for that. But I'll link all your socials and people can check that out.
Yes, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll be the first to know. And I'm obsessed with polls. I ask lots and lots of questions. I like to poll my fans about what they think about certain things with A Song of Ice and Fire and His Dark Materials. I am Aemy Poehler, Poller, so check that out.
All right, so let's get into the TV show. So
yes.
I'd said to you beforehand, let's recap what happened at the end of season 1, because I'm assuming that people watching this will have at least watched season 1. If you don't want to know what happens, then do look away now. But
just look away, but keep listening.
Well, cover your ears, but keep watching.
Yeah.
So last time we saw Lyra, she was disappearing into the bridge between worlds, right?
Yeah, with Pan, of course, her trusty
and simultaneously
soul sidekick.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. The most important character in the books, I think, in some ways.
Han is Bay. I hope they have a bigger budget now, so I expect more demons. I need it.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
That was probably my main gripe about the first season, just not enough demons. But if you don't have enough budget, you don't have enough budget.
It was noticeable at times where in the first season they had the demons, obviously, and they were part of the plot, but then they would just sort of seem to disappear at times, and you'd be like, where's Pan gone? Is he just in her pocket all the time, or what?
Yeah, especially Lord Boreal. He's like, "Ooh, I got this cool snake," and you see him one time, and it's like, is he just chilling in his sleeve? Like, I get when he's in Will's world, he needs to hide it.
Yeah,
when he's in his own, it's like, where's the snake? He could be like Britney Spears with a snake around his neck. Like,
I guess. Well, the thing about the demons is they're reflective of. I mean, they are literally the character's soul. They're an incarnation of the character's soul, is what they are. So. Yes. I suppose that's sort of reflective of his secretive, sneaky sort of nature.
Absolutely. Yeah, it works for him. But I would say for Mrs. Coulter, though, and I am going to write an essay on monkey symbolism and Mrs. Coulter's demon, because I've done that with Tyrion in Monkey Symbolism from Song of Ice and Fire. But he's supposed to be this beautiful golden monkey that stands out. And then sometimes you don't quite see him, and sometimes he looks a little dull. You know, he's supposed to kind of be shiny and attractive, just like her, right? But in the end, devious, which is why the monkey was, I really think Philip Pullman really thought about these animals and in relation to the character, right? We have Lord Azrael with this beautiful, it's like a snow leopard, right? Which seems perfect for him, right? Dangerous, but also really elegant.
Sort of majestic and kingly sort of animal, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Very royal, which Lord Azrael really gives off that. And I have to say, the casting, I have hardly any complaints though for the show. I think they killed it on the casting. Yeah, and the guy who plays Lord Azrael actually makes you feel for Lord Azrael, which is weird because in the books, at least for me, I did not. I was not sympathetic to him at all. But the actor, is it McAvoy? Who plays Azrael, you actually feel for him and see his motivations, which is just
we'll probably not see very much of James McAvoy in season 2. Last time we saw him, he was also disappearing into the Bridge of Light to destinations unknown. But us book readers know that he doesn't show up again for a little while. So McAvoy is getting a break, which is probably a good thing for the budget.
Definitely high billing. So we have Lyra and Pan going into this Bridge of Light, right? And I think what's really great about the end of season 1 is Pan and Lyra, they've always been curious and suspicious, but this is when they finally go, we're not going to trust adults, we're going to trust ourselves. And I obviously read this as an adult, not as a child, but I think if I would have read it as a child, that would have been very impactful to me when Pan says, hey, the adults say dust is bad, so maybe that means it's good, right? and there is a time, I think for me it was around 11 or 12, which is where Lyra's getting an age, where I kind of realized adults don't know what's going on. They're making it up as they go along, and maybe you shouldn't trust them, right? And so we really have this, and we'll talk about themes later, where childhood going into adulthood, adolescence is a very big theme in this. So they're going, hey.
It ties in with one of the other big themes as well about sort of science and rationalism and enlightenment as well, because it's all about asking questions, I think.
Definitely.
It's a big theme of rebelling against the adults, rebelling against the magisterium and the society that Lyra grew up in. But it's about questioning your hierarchy that you're placed in, I think.
And she grew up in Jordan College where academics were asking questions, but even then they were controlled by the magisterium. So she was told to be curious sort of, but then kind of held back when she asked questions. Because of the religious aspects, which we'll also, of course, get into. But that's where Lyra and Pam are going. They are going into, if you're a book reader, you know, but if you're a show watcher, worlds unknown, right?
And simultaneously, we also saw Will from our world also entering a portal at the exact same moment. At least that was the way that the editing made it appear.
Yes.
And we will see where he ends up in season 2.
Yes, and book readers know that we don't see Will until book 2. So actually, show watchers, you're getting some from The Subtle Knife, the second book, already. And I've actually talked to a couple fans who were very anti that choice. I actually wasn't. I think that we needed to be introduced to Will just a smidge earlier. So I actually really agreed with that decision by HBO.
Yeah, I thought it was good pacing, actually. Because it was a B plot to the main storyline, wasn't it, in season 1? But I think it would take a whole episode of just him to be able to get up to speed with what happened with his character.
And as a show watcher, it would feel really awkward if the first season or episode of season 2 was just this random kid in another world that seems more like our own. I also do want to give a shout out for the casting. It's assumed that all the characters are white, and yet thank God they put some people of color in this movie, because Will's mother and himself are those actors are great at this. And luckily, from what I could see, and the internet can be terrible, people were pretty accepting of that, and Philip Pullman doesn't come right out and say that they're white, and there are plenty of British people.
I was going to say, I don't think he describes their ethnicity anyway.
And yet, whenever these shows happen, they just assume, right? But it's England. There can easily be people of color, right? And so I really want to shout out the casting once again for that, trying to keep it a little bit more representative. And I think, Will's actor, I am very excited to see what he's going to do for season 2. But we have Lyra and Pan going in, and then Will is going in this, he of course follows the cat. And by the way, is that Moxie, the cat? Or is that a different cat?
I don't know.
I don't remember, but there's this joke in Girls Gone Canon about Moxie the murder cat. But we'll have to talk about that. But yeah, he follows this cat kind of into this little window, right? So we have our two really main characters moving into this other world, right? And we have, like you were saying, Lord Boreal's kind of skipping out. He's headed somewhere as well. But we have Marissa Coulter having this kind of coming to Jesus moment right at the very end, where she says, first of all, she kind of makes out with Lord Azrael a little bit, smoochy smooch. And then she does
the whole old flame thing,
Oh yeah, reigniting the old flame and then pulling away, very classic romantic trope. But she says, no, I do want my daughter, right? And he is very suspicious of that because she hadn't shown any interest in being a mother before. And this is a very common also kind of gender relation trope, right? She was so focused on her career that she didn't think she could also be a mother. She didn't want it in the first place, but she's kind of realizing that she could have both, right? And so we have Miss Coulter kind of maybe getting a little bit more gray area away from the absolute villain that we kind of really get at first. And we do realize that Marissa is a little bit more of a gray area character, whereas Lord Azrael, I would say not so much. He's gone full tilt. He's the Sith gone full dark side.
I think they're both quite grey in some ways. I think they're both got some pretty evil tendencies, but also they both have their sort of goals and
ambition. Yeah, but not in a good way.
And I feel like the world that they've grown up in has shaped both of them. They're very interesting characters.
Yes.
Very, very interesting characters, because the dynamic between them is it's not a give and take between a couple that you can see this being sort of a functional relationship between them. We never really get any flashbacks of them in the books for when they were in love, but we see them, as previous lovers. And one thing that's really interesting is that Mrs. Coulter seems to care about Lyra more than Lord Azrael does in many ways. She was a reluctant mother and she gave up her child. But she seems to really care about Lyra.
Right? He was in her life as her uncle, right? He was around technically, but it was really Marissa who kind of has that need to protect Lyra, especially this last episode of season 1 tells us that. Okay,
so we have the trailer on screen for the new season. I pulled some stills from it and we're going to go through it a little bit. The first shot that we see is of the Magisterium's blimps, their army of blimps. They're leaving the site of the bridge by the looks of it. And then we see Lyra.
Yeah, and I also was just going to quote the trailer directly too. Around the 10-second marker, we see this like magisterium kind of meeting, and they say the world is aware of this threat, but have no fear, we will do whatever is necessary. Very foreboding coming from the magisterium, right? Because they are very controlling over Lyra's world.
Yeah. I mean, they basically conquered most of the quote unquote civilized world. There's your colonialism theme again, using that word, but yeah, they're absolute control freaks. And Lord Azrael, speaking of him again, he intends to break the control, as we heard him say in the last episode of season 1. But we don't know what his plan for the new world is. He says he wants to establish a Republic of Heaven, which I think is such a cool term. But Lee Scoresby, we see him at the beginning here. Where did we leave him at the end of season 1? He'd just been given a mission by the witches.
Yes. Yeah, and he's finally kind of starting to accept this mission to protect Lyra, right? He's going full tilt. He's kind of this Western, cowboy figure who is kind of on his own with his really cute little bunny demon, right? And he seems like he just kind of wants to, get paid as an aeronaut on a mission and then leave. But he's now starting to really quickly realize that there's something bigger than himself.
Yeah, it's like he's found a calling. And he certainly seems to love and respect Lyra a great deal. And
Sorry, I love the armored bears.
They're fantastic, aren't they? So speaking of people who love and respect Lyra, her guardian, the King of the Bears. So we'll be seeing more of him in season 2. And then we get Seraphina Pecular, the witch that we saw in season 1, and presumably that's Ruth Skadi with her, who is I think she's the leader of
a different clan of
a different clan. Yeah.
I believe you're right. I think that is Ruta.
We can't see her face here, but we'll see. That seems to be her, maybe.
Yes, I think so.
I haven't seen the.
We don't really get that many other named witches in the book, so I don't know who else it could be.
There's one who shows up later on who gets kidnapped by Mrs. Coulter, but I don't think she would be in the trailer. But those are the only witches that I can think of that were named. So, Ruta Skadi, she ends up working for Lord Azrael, whereas Seraphina Pecular, her main motivation is protecting Lyra. And then we get to a new setting. So we spoke earlier about where Will and Lyra are headed to. We see them here together walking up some steps. And here we see them walking up towards a tall tower structure. And viewers of the season 1 will remember Lord Boreal speaking about a tower that was guarded by angels, right?
Yes.
So sort of season 1 viewers will be able to figure out roughly where they are. At least the reference is there.
Yeah, and
I don't want to say too much about this plot. But...
Yeah, and Lord Boreal always seems to know much more than most of the characters, right? So we know he knows more as a viewer. So he's giving us what he wants us to know.
Yeah, I mean, as a viewer, we even know a bit more than book readers do at this point.
This is true.
Because we didn't get this in the first book. In the trilogy. But moving on, we see the bridge from the other side, presumably, because that's clearly not the North Pole. So the setting here is it's a city called, I believe it's pronounced Cittagazze.
I've heard Cittagazze. So
Cittagazze. Okay.
Yeah, because I've heard that with Italian, the C is always a ch sound. So, but that's I'm not an expert. Ask me about Chinese pronunciation. Don't ask me about Italian. But I've heard Cittagazze. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's set in the equivalent of Italy in whatever world it is that they arrive in. So it's an alternate world. We'll see a lot of world building happen in season 2.
This is a little bit of background on Pullman. He created this setting based on one of his favorite Italian artists' rendition of a city. So it's also going to be very artsy, right? It's going to feel a little fantasy, which is I'm very excited to see.
Oh, it absolutely should as well. I mean, the tower itself looks amazing.
Definitely. I think they really, from the shots we've gotten, I think they're gonna totally kill it as far as Chitagaze.
Yeah, we'll see some wide angle shots of the city in a moment. But moving on, here we go. So we've got an island built on a city built on it's not quite an island. I'm not sure what you call that.
A very tiny peninsula.
Yeah.
A little, yeah.
Sort of a hill in the middle of the ocean. But yeah, I'm not sure where this is shot. I imagine this is CG. But yeah, certainly looks beautiful. And more shots of them wandering around town. And
notice it's very empty also. Show viewers will be interested to wonder why it's so empty. So
yeah, we'll
I'm not telling.
We'll get a hint about that in just a moment. And here we see Lyra talking to Will. They will meet fairly soon at the beginning of season 1. And we'll see the relationship between these two kind of blossom over the course of the season. So they start off with a few sort of preconceptions and fears about one another, don't they?
Definitely.
At least in the book.
Yeah.
Lyra sees Will for the first time and he doesn't have a demon. And she doesn't.
That's going to freak her out.
She doesn't understand that, and it's going to freak her out. Exactly.
It would be like someone not having an arm. Like it, it's something that is always with them, and so that's automatically. And then he's going to see her having this shape-shifting thing, and he's going to be freaked out by that.
Naturally.
So definitely a big difference.
But luckily, there's stuff going on around them that's going to freak them both out a lot more.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, they'll quickly get over each other's weirdness and get into the weirdness of this new world that they're in, right? And this world is totally different from Lyra's and Will's.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And here they are looking up at the tower.
Oh, and when they pan up on that shot, that's probably my favorite part of the trailer, because as book readers, like, yes, it's the tower!
And we see the angels down below. I think in this trailer, we do see some actual angels show up later on as well.
Man, I should have watched this trailer. The one I watched seemed to have more of the witches in it, though, so I'm not complaining, because the witches are my favorite part of the book series. So.
And more. Is that Pan on the table there? I assume it's Pan on the table there looking at Will. Hard to say. I don't remember there being a raccoon demon that belonged to anybody else.
Yeah, and book watchers and show watchers, or book readers and show watchers would remember that Pan can, because Lyra hasn't hit puberty yet, Pan can change to whatever shape he wants.
And here we see an interesting looking shot with a photo of Lyra, and we can see the device that they use to separate demons, which we saw in season 1 at the
Roger. Sorry, Roger. I just got really emotional thinking about it.
Roger.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another character that we left at the end of season 1, and he was a goner, unfortunately. I don't want to say too much about him because there's stuff coming up relating to Roger in the future. Yes. Watch this space. But yeah, I don't recall her finding a book like this this must be Lord Boreal's place, maybe?
And the hand looks, with the ring and everything, that looks like it might be Anne. Sorry, I was about to say Ann Coulter. Jesus, Marissa Coulter. Looks like it's Marissa Coulter's hand.
Gosh, if Ann Coulter shows up in this,
oh my God, then I will throw my shoe at the TV. But I believe that is Miss Coulter's hand. I am not sure about it, but it looks like a feminine hand.
Yes, it does. It looks like a darker complexion than hers, though.
You're right.
It might just be the lighting.
It could be the lighting, or it could be a new character. I don't know.
And here she is.
Oh, she's so pretty.
Such a great piece of casting. Have you ever seen Luther with Idris Elba?
I have.
You have. So she's a great character in that as well.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved her in that. And when she was cast in this role, I was just like, perfect.
I think she sometimes reminds me a little bit of Nicole Kidman with her range of facial expressions.
Yeah.
I think really, really well done.
She reminds me as well of, with her facial expressions, of the sister in Breaking Bad. I don't know if you've seen that.
It's been a very long time. And I unfortunately don't at me, I was not that big of a fan of that show as a lot of people were. But I get what it was trying to do. I get the themes. I just wasn't a big fan.
But yeah, the actress reminds me of that actress as well. But yeah, she's great in Luther, which is also a brilliant show. And she's great in this too.
And, she, for her being so good, I quickly got over the fact that she and Lyra weren't blonde. Because obviously I have a personal investment in having more blonde characters. But I was totally fine that they had dark hair because, I mean, if you're going to cast her, like, don't put a weird blonde wig on her or anything. Like, she's a perfect being as she is. So I quickly got over the hair color change.
I had barely noticed. But you're right, she was blonde in the books. Yeah.
Yes, Lyra and Mrs. Coulter both were. Yeah, obviously I would recognize that detail.
Yeah, I just want more bald guys not playing bad guys for once.
That would be great. That would be so great. It's really a bad trope.
So now we see a wide-angle shot of the Magisterium with looking very Pentagonish here.
Very, yes. It looks very official and very imposing.
Mm-hmm. And are those airships around there, blimps?
Those are, you're correct.
Parked around there, it looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, for a second they looked like they were parked on the ground, but some of them look like they're in the air. Yeah.
And this guy, what's this guy's name? I've forgotten.
I have forgotten too. I think he's kind of the prime minister kind of thing of the Magisterium. Is he the guy that seems to give all the speeches? I think so.
Yeah, he seems to be in charge of the Magisterium, at least the people that we see.
And careful show watchers will notice there's some ambaric light there, right? Not electric light. And like with the blimps, right? Lyra's world has developed similarly but differently.
There's your witches again. This looks like
I love them so much.
This looks like a shot that continues on from the shot that we saw of them earlier on in the same trailer. It's obviously cut out of order, as all trailers are. Yeah,
but the witches are preparing for a grand battle, and that the trailer that I saw right out said that. They said, we have to prepare for the coming war. So there's this kind of clash of worlds, kind of that the witches, and hey, if the witches think it's going to happen, pay attention, because they're really prophetic beings.
And some of the witches do fight on the side of the Magisterium, don't they? In the
this is true. They are not a homogenous, there are many different clans. So there are, I believe, 1 or 2 clans that are fighting with the Magisterium. But our Seraphina Pecular is on the side of good. Lyra, yeah.
The witches are, it's a very interesting interpretation of the concept of witches, because they're kind of like, I think of them as like Amazons almost. Because they're not really doing sort of sorcery type stuff, really. They have powers, but they seem to be quite innate powers. And you think about the religious aspects of the books and witches being burned at the stake and all that sort of thing. It's a very appropriate sort of strong female.
Especially since the Magisterium is so masculine, right? Ann Coulter, gosh dang it, Marissa Coulter, right? I'm just going to start saying Mrs. Coulter. Mrs. Coulter had to claw her way up to the top, and even then she's not fully recognized by the men at the Magisterium. And then you have Seraphina Pecular and the witches, who represent a kind of matriarchal, kind of more caring and justice-driven female-oriented society. And they live separately, really, from humans. We do, know that Seraphina was with, was it Fa?
No, it was Farda Coram, wasn't it?
Yes. So we do know that they do take human lovers, but if they have sons, then the sons are mortal. And if they have daughters, then the daughters will live longer because they will be witches. And so I really obviously appreciate that the kind of one sex getting getting a leg up over the other. It's kind of switched. It's the females. If you were born female from a witch, that's actually, you then get all of these amazing powers.
And this is the torture scene that we were talking about earlier on, isn't it?
Yes, this is. So yeah, Mrs. Coulter says, these witches know more than they're saying, which is absolutely true. I just said a little bit earlier how the witches are kind of prophetic beings, and they kind of sense. So they have a meta view, which is what we need when we're talking about multiple worlds, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is what sets Lyra up to be such an important character as well, because there's a prophecy about her.
It's the classic chosen one theme. I mean, every fantasy has it. I'm reading the Poppy War right now. I'm going to write some essays about that. There's a little bit of the chosen one in there. Everyone knows Harry Potter has the chosen one aspect to it. Azor Ahai in Song of Ice and Fire, right? It's very, very large about prophecy and who's going to be the savior. And in this case, I'm very, very proud to say it's a woman, right? It's a girl who's going to become a woman.
It's a young woman coming of age, which is a really big thing.
Yeah.
And when we see a cage with some indeterminate thing inside it.
Gee, what is that? We don't know. You said you got to keep this as no spoilers. So
yeah, I don't know how good a job I'm doing of not spoiling things, but
there's Mrs. Coulter walking around like the boss she is. Yes. More bad guy bald dude.
Another evil bald guy.
Yes. So sad.
Another wide angle of Shitagatse.
You got it.
Who's this character on the right here?
I took it to be the same bald guy, but you know what? I hate to say this. Sometimes I can't tell bald guys apart, Dan. I'm sorry.
No, the woman that he's talking to.
Oh, the woman. Oh my goodness. I am not sure.
I don't think this is a character we've seen anywhere
I think
before.
This is going to be a new season 2 character. Oh, I think I might know who it is, but I won't say.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's possible spoilers, so I got to be good.
we got Lyra. We've got more Mrs. Coulter.
And her yes, I love that monkey. I love it so much.
He's very much like the evil monkey sort of monkey, isn't he? He's
exactly.
He's like the monkey in Raiders of the Lost Ark rather than the monkey in, like, I don't know, Aladdin.
Or the baboon in Lion King, right? And I'm going to write a lot about this monkey trope in my Ann Coulter Demon essay, which is probably going to be a couple months because I'm writing way too many things at once.
And Coulter Demon essay. That's
oh gosh, dang it! I did it again, Marissa Coulter. Oh my gosh, though, I could write that essay. So DEMON, not D.
I'm gonna put Ann Coulter in the tags for this video.
Oh my god!
We're gonna go to alt-right.
Don't at me, Ann Coulter. Marissa Coulter. I need to keep saying Mrs. Coulter. I don't know what it is. It's just in my mind and it won't go away. Oh, okay. Mrs. Coulter.
Andrew Scott.
He played the Moriarty and
yes, he did.
Holmes, did he not? He's so good at that role of being like this kind of brilliant, kind of also a little bit bad guy character.
Creepy psycho guy.
Very, very good at that.
Evil genius.
Yeah.
This is a very different role for him. As we said earlier on, we first meet him when he's kind of embedded himself in a tribe of the Tartars, and we're going to meet him, and he's going to be revealed as Will's father. But Will won't meet him for a little while. Yeah.
And he, like Lord Boreal, is a character that knows a lot more than the Watcher or most of the characters. So he's going to drop some important knowledge bombs on us for sure.
We heard a lot about him in season 1, and we were told about him in book 1 for book readers. And yeah, a great piece of casting again. I can see him as Will's dad as well. Casting parents for mixed race children is always probably a difficulty, I'd say, for showrunners. But I can see his face in the actor that plays Will.
Definitely, yeah, because Will is definitely growing into being a handsome man, right? A young man. And so you kind of see that. But you also see a little bit of his mom in it as well. They did a really good job of casting for sure.
Yeah, I seem to remember you said earlier on about him not being described as mixed race or not being described it one way or another in the books, but I seem to remember imagining Will's character as a non-white character when I read the books.
I don't know if I pictured him one way or the other. I just know that casting has a very, very bad history of if a character is not specifically said it's a person of color, then they cast a white person automatically.
And sometimes cast a white person anyway.
Yeah.
Whitewashing.
Yeah, not good stuff. Once again, Orientalism. But yeah.
We get more John Parry?
More of John Parry, or Joe Parry, as the
Joe
Tartars call him. He's also known by another name, but I don't know if that's been revealed, so I won't say.
They do say the other name in the trailer. I think people who watch the trailer will figure it out. But yeah, we won't say. And this shot, I'm not sure what we're looking at here, but we're looking at somebody holding up their ring.
They're very mysterious with the hood and all that.
Yeah,
so.
And we see a hooded figure, and we see him looking at his signet ring. Lee Scoresby again.
My love.
I think he's got one of the best demons as well.
Yes, Hester, right?
Hester, the bunny rabbit.
Bunny. Oh, yeah. I love her so much. And I love the lip that she kind of gives him. He's a little too, he's a free spirit, and she kind of mellows him out a little bit and questions, if this is really a good idea. Which I think
these two have a lot of banter, don't they?
Excellent.
More so than any other character with their demon, I think.
Yeah.
Almost as if he's a bit scatterbrained and all over the place himself internally, and that's why he fights with his demon,
but it's conscience.
but it's like it's not adversarial, is it? But it's like they have this running banter, which works really well for the character. And it's
basically a way of showing someone's internal monologue, right? But putting it in the context of the human demon relationship.
Yeah, sort of soliloquizing with your own soul.
Yeah.
And then we get, I think this is the forging of the subtle knife. So this will be a flashback to that, which I don't want to tell too much about the subtle knife, but obviously
it's a knife and it's subtle. That's all we know.
Yeah. Is it subtle? I don't understand the name really. I don't understand why it's called that. Is it subtle?
It doesn't come right out and say what it thinks. It's very subtle at parties.
We get a close shot of the handle of the blade.
Yeah, the hilt, kind of. Yeah.
And it's got a little angel on there. And here's Will holding it up.
And we have a Lyra with her lithiometer, so of course Will's got to have some kind of little instrument, right? Yeah, magical piece.
Everyone's got to have something.
Yeah.
And then we see another portal opening up.
I notice it's kind of a gash, right? That's there, rather than this kind of window that we saw Will go through.
There's Hester.
And then, they're having their bro bonding moments, John Parry and Lee Scoresby over there, getting to know each other off on a mission. And then we've got him. Yeah, he's doing his aeronaut thing, right?
I love all the balloons and the sort of steampunk element of this world.
That's my favorite type of fantasy and science fiction, is actually steampunk. So that's actually what attracted me to this series in the first place, was the steampunk aspect. And then also I love this kind of the Cartesian idea of the soul and the body being separate through demons. I think that Philip Pullman is definitely playing with that.
Mm-hmm. More Lyra.
More balloons. Yes.
And we get more witches.
And them talking to each other is going to give the viewer a lot of information on this prophecy and what is going on with Lyra. Why are they so interested in her?
Yes, there's a particular prophecy made about her, which is going to tie in with the theology of the world, and we'll see that play out in the end of the story when we get there. But yeah, they're certainly big givers of exposition, aren't they? The witches.
They really are.
Here they are off in the woods doing their witchy thing. So maybe this is Ruth Ascardi. This is a different witch again.
You're right.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out for
I'm not really
season 2.
sure. We'll find out. I mean, I'm sure they have actually released all of this. We got Witch Flight. Evil Bald Guy.
Yes, back at it again.
And then we get, you haven't seen this trailer, have you? But we get a great shot here of blimps firing bombs out of the back of the blimp.
Nice. Love that steampunk warfare.
Yeah. So these barrels come rolling out of the back here, and they land, and then this happens. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
The witches are a little bit overwhelmed by that kind of the weapons of mass destruction, right, that the Magisterium have.
Back to Chittagaze.
Back to Chittagaze. All happy. Everything's fine. Got Lord Boreal. You know, he's scheming. He's up to something with his snake.
So here we see something which is coming up in the city of Stutagaze. We mentioned earlier on that the streets look very empty. And when Will and Lyra arrive there, there's a mystery to solve.
Yes.
And here we see, this is not a Dementor. This is a Spectre, it's called.
TRE. Spectre. Yeah.
And I won't say too much about the backstory behind them, but there's a mystery to solve there, which would be very interesting to see on screen.
And I think from what I've seen of the special effects of the Spectres, it looks like it's going to be very creepy, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, we're about to see a shot of one of them doing some creepy sort of vaguely mystical kind of thing to some guy, some poor victim. Got Boreal, and is that Mrs. Coulter stepping into a portal? It looks like it.
Yes, I can tell by her fashion. She
certainly looks like her dress sense.
Yeah.
She's got the kind of like 1920s sort of dress sense.
Yes, yeah, very 20s, 30s, 40s kind of tight pencil skirts, kind of suit coat, suit jackets with always has a good hat. So very, very 20s to 40s fashion going on.
And then we see the tower again. Tower from Nighttime. Will with something coming up behind him. Something creeping up behind him. We'll find out more. This is cool. They're showing some emotion.
Yes, that's going to be interesting to see.
It certainly is. Yeah, we're going to see more and more of this from her.
Yeah, because as we saw at the end of the first season, she was starting to open up a little bit more, right? And not be this kind of power woman, in a suit, kind of going and doing what needs to be done, kind of an arm of the magisterium. Now she's going to kind of perhaps be fighting for things she wants and not what the magisterium tells her to do. So
one thing that we haven't said is coming up with season 2 as well. One of the episodes was cut for season 2. So because of the COVID-19 crisis, they had to wrap filming. They filmed most of everything before that happened. And then finished it working from home, but they did cut one episode from season 2. So it'd be interesting to see where Mrs. Coulter's character ends up, because she kind of reaches a crossroads at the end of book 2, and she has a decision to make, and she makes, I think, the wrong one. But we may not get there in season 2.
Yeah,
so we might wait longer. But
strange hooded figure again, mysterious.
Oh, that's John Parry, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I thought it was that person with the ring earlier.
Yeah, maybe that was him with the ring, but I don't remember him having a ring in the books. Not sure, but that's him in the balloon. Was it the balloon, isn't it?
Oh, the air balloon. Yeah. That Lee Scoresby's balloon, probably.
Yeah, it looks like. I don't know who we're looking at here.
I can't tell.
It's a nautical setting. The guy seems to have a sailor's hat on of some sort, and I think that's one of the witches there with him, but it's very blurry.
Yeah.
Spectres.
Back at it again, being creepy.
Yeah, I think the visual effects for the Spectres look really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, I like that they're kind of this like black smoke that kind of change form constantly, right? They're not really corporeal, which is kind of how I imagined them when I was reading.
For sure, yeah. Lee Scoresby. Magisterium Stormtroopers. I wonder if they're a better shot than the Stormtroopers in Star Wars.
Let's hope not. We want to. Yes, my favorite. Amen. Other than
we're almost at the end of this. And we've got 4 frames left. So we see the tower, with somebody falling out of the window. Somebody I know who, but somebody falling out of the window. And we see the witches with Lyra.
Yeah, Lyra is reunited with the witches who have been wanting to help her, right, for some grand mission.
Will's there too. He's seen something off in the distance. We've got the hot air balloon. And finally, we see Will having a fight with some guy with gelled hair and the subtle knife embedded in the floor.
Yes.
And that's the final slide that I've got here of the trailer. So that's our preview of the trailer.
And the trailer that I watched too, I think has kind of a lot of that witches exposition in it. So I do recommend that viewers watch as many trailers as they can get their hands on. I think there were 2 or 3 that have been released. So, but the one I watched had a lot of the witches, more than this one, and so I definitely recommend that one.
Yeah, one character that we didn't see at all in the trailer that I just shared with everybody was Mary Malone. We didn't see any of her in that.
You, I think, see her in the one that I watched, if I'm not mistaken. You do see Lyra in a lab, so I think that's what it's hinting at. And Malone is actually my favorite Book 2 character. I don't want to say why. I guess my reasons aren't really that much of a spoiler, but a little bit, so I won't say why. But she does something with the Book of Changes that is very interesting to me. So as a Chinese studies major.
Yeah, she's a great character. I like her a lot. She's a sort of a point of view character as well, isn't she?
And goes back with this theme of science and experimentation and rationality that we've kind of alluded to earlier.
So this is a character who I guess she's like a particle physicist, but she's a scientist, and she's looking for evidence of dark matter, which is a real thing in physics. For those who don't know, it's a real thing where scientists are currently in the real world trying to discover what dark matter is and how it interacts with the universe that we do understand and matter that we do understand, because it doesn't interact strongly with normal matter, but we know it's there for reasons. We know it's there because physicists can equate the mass of the universe. Essentially, the mass of the universe doesn't add up to the number that it should do. So we know that there's all this stuff out there which scientists call dark matter. Yeah.
So it kind of feels it's like the leftovers that we don't quite understand the laws of it yet. Basically.
Yeah, not a physicist, obviously not a physics major. So that's my sort of very terse explanation of dark matter for you. But in the world of his dark materials, what we see from dark matter is that it's dust.
Yes.
So that's what we get from that character, and that's where we meet her.
And that's where we get a little bit more exposition, right? We get it from the witches on kind of the magical prophecy side, but then from Malone, we're going to get more scientific explanations for these phenomenon that we've been seeing and hearing about on the series.
Okay, so let's finish up with talking about some of the general themes that we see in the books and why they're so interesting and why they're so different to anything else in the same genre. Is that we see an alternate world, but we see a world which is kind of a dystopian dark version of our own world, where certain problems in our own society are amplified. The sort of pervasiveness of fundamentalist religion has taken over the world almost. We see a highly misogynistic society, even more so than our own.
Yeah, Lyra in the books, I don't know about in the show, but in the books, I think it was in The Subtle Knife, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Will gives her pants and she goes, "That's silly, I'm a girl," right? They only wear skirts still in Lyra's world. So even the fashion has not, like we were talking about earlier, 20s, 30s, 40s is kind of how Coulter dresses. So everything seems to be, some things have progressed similarly to our world, but others seem more backwards.
And technology is different as well. You mentioned the anbaric light in one of those stills that we saw there, which is I think it's a Greek word, which is an alternate word for electricity, but it's like their version of electricity in Lyra's world, which is a detail that you get in the books quite a bit. Stuff like that is just slightly different, which I like. But yeah, going back to the themes, another big theme I see in the books is the coming of age thing. So this is something that's really important in season 2 and in book 2 as well, which is the relationship that we see forming between Will and Lyra, which we'll see come to a head in the 3rd book. But both of these, they're 2 young people who are starting to like the opposite sex for the first time. And this is something that I saw as well with the comparison that I like to make with Pullman with C.S. Lewis. One thing that he was quoted as saying about C.S. Lewis was how much he hates the story of Susan in the Chronicles of Narnia and what happens to her, and how much he sort of despises that sort of, I don't know how to put it, but that frankly misogynistic take on female adolescence.
Men writing women starting their periods and this kind of stuff. We've seen it with George R.R. Martin. It can get a little weird. And I do just want to say real quick, Dan, this is a little bit of a disclaimer. As someone who is bisexual, you also can develop feelings for people of the same sex, or you could be asexual and not develop these feelings at all. That can also be very confusing. So I do want to, we're obviously talking about what I assume is a straight man writing these things. So he, of course, his experience with adolescence is different from mine as a girl who grew up and turned out to be a bisexual woman. And there, I have some friends who are asexual and non-binary. So there are a lot of different sexualities that we could see expressed, but we do get a little bit more traditional heterosexual sexuality developing here.
Well, we do between, not to spoil it too much, but we do between the two protagonists, because we see them bonding over the course of the second book and getting closer. And there's this kind of almost sexual tension between the two characters, except for they don't call it that because they're kids.
Yeah, but you can easily ship them, is what we're saying.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. So that's what I was alluding to there, really. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, their lived experience is one thing, and the authors is another. Like I said earlier, it's also Lyra's kind of nature of questioning everything and rebelling when she needs to, and just her forthrightness and her slightly chaotic nature versus his kind of, there's this parallel with the two characters where his setup is very serious. He's a very serious kid, and he's had to take care of his mother. He's had to take care of his mother. Child.
Yeah.
But even the lead-in is, it's a murder and it's a conspiracy, and there's all this kind of serious, scary stuff happening. And when he meets Lyra, he doesn't quite understand her because he gets her story, and it's armored bears and witches and
it seems childish.
It seems childish to him, and he doesn't quite understand her at first, and that's where this tension first starts. But they rapidly begin to understand each other, don't they?
Yeah, and I think she becomes more serious because of him, and he's allowed to be a kid a little bit because of her. I think they really really mellow each other out one way or another really well. And also, if I could just speak a little bit more on the feminist elements that we're going to have coming up and that we have seen in the show. The witches themselves, like we were saying earlier, are having this kind of matriarchal organization. They are the leaders, right? And they make kind of the decisions about their love life and so forth. And we also have, of course, Mrs. Coulter, who was kind of the working woman who then realized she might want to be the working woman who's also a mom, as someone who grew up with a feminist mother who was doing both. My mom worked full time and took care of me. It is very possible to have it all, as they say in the women's magazines. And so we really see Mrs. Coulter kind of coming into her own as a woman who was rejecting the feminine aspects of her life, including motherhood, to be this more masculine magisterium figure. Definitely. And I think with Malone, the female scientist, we're also going to see a lot of this kind of curious working woman archetype being really kind of filled out a little bit more. And I do have to give it up to Philip Pullman. I kind of give him crap for being an old white guy, but he's done a pretty good job with writing women, especially compared to many other fantasy writers. And the fact that he picked a woman to be his protagonist alone, or a young woman, to be his protagonist alone is worth praising.
Yeah, it's a story full of strong women. I think the bad women and the good women are all strong characters, and they're all very well-rounded characters. I kind of wish that we get to know the witches better in the books in some ways.
Me too.
But I think part of their power is their mystery, isn't it?
I think, yes. I think like what we get with Game of Thrones and George R. R. Martin, he kind of wants to keep the magic a little bit under wraps. But I wish we would get a little bit more about stories about their ancestor witches, and how they've kind of evolved and organized. That would be really nice to know. But we kind of just get them in their current state. And I think also the fact that they live a long time is really important, because they have this, like I said, meta perspective on the world, and they will find out, and this isn't too much of a spoiler, they kind of already know that there are multiple worlds, and it seems like no one else in Liva's world really knew that except for Azrael.
Well, it's almost actually, it's a bit like the elves in Tolkien, quite honestly, because they have this long life and they have a different perspective on the spiritual world as well. So it's almost a little bit like that in ways.
Definitely.
But yeah, right. So should we try and wrap this up? Aemy, tell the people where to find you, and plug whatever you want to plug.
So I am on Twitter at Aemy Blackfire. You can see the spelling right there. It's AEMY and then Blackfire with a Y. I'm not a Blackfire loyalist. I'm a Targ loyalist, just for anyone that knows the Song of Ice and Fire. Once again, I write about I'm writing about something that not really anyone else in the fandom, these particular fandoms are, which is Eastern symbolism, right? Non-Western symbolism, looking at kind of what does the soul mean? What is the black and white imagery, right? What are witches, magic? I kind of want to look at all this through the Eastern lens. So the monkey symbolism, what I'm going to talk about with Mrs. Coulter's demon. I'm going to drop my first His Dark Materials essay in about 2 weeks. And I hope to keep writing that. But for those of you that are fans of Song of Ice and Fire, I already have about 5 essays out. And I have music videos. I wish that'd be fun. I have YouTube videos of me reading them to you. And my latest video has, like I said, a discussion with some powerhouses in the fandom. And I was very glad that my first panel was all female. So we really were coming at it hard.
You're really lucky to get some great guests on for that first.
I was extremely lucky. Yeah, that they offered. They originally just offered comments on the essay, and then I was like, "Do you want to come on and talk about it, though? So you've already done work on it." My YouTube channel is Aemy Blackfire. Once again, the same spelling. And I have a lot coming up. I have an essay about Cersei, comparing her to the last Empress of China. And like I said, I'm doing a lot of stuff with Low. I'm doing a His Dark Materials essay with them we're going to do, I forget what we're going to do for His Dark Materials, but we're going to do also a Song of Ice and Fire essay, and we're going to do a Poppy War essay. Anyone that's heard of the Poppy War, it is a Chinese-American fantasy series that I highly recommend by R.F. Kuang. She's an amazing, amazing author, and she just recently won a 100 best fantasy books of all time from the New York Times. She made the list. So it's very exciting. So I have a lot coming up, and but I will leave it there. Like I said, if you follow me on Twitter and if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, then you will be the first to know whenever any of my content drops.